Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. And today we have our first episode working alongside Climbing the Pocket and Daily Norseman. So if you were listening to the previous 26 episodes, thank you. We appreciate that. But we're now moving over to Daily Norseman, so you can find the show up on there now in their rotation with the other Climbing the Pocket podcast, which you should also listen to. If you're a new listener, welcome to the show. Like I said, I'm BJ, and that's Drew. And we're going to talk about the Vikings today. That's the game plan. So we are going to, today's episode, we'll start off with a Thursday question like we typically do. And then we will get right into a breakdown of the Vikings matchup with the Denver Broncos. Should be a fun one. Certainly the expectation is that the Vikings come out with a W from this one. And I'm really excited to break down Brandon Allen for you guys. So
I am not excited to do that.
We'll also make our picks. It's something we also do on a weekly basis. And hopefully we can get more of those correct than we did last week and finish up with a gambling lock, and that will be today's episode of the Unbelievable Podcast. So let's start this thing off with the Thursday question. For those of you that are new, Thursday question is quite literally what it sounds like. I'm going to ask a question. We're going to answer it to kind of break the ice, and then we're going to jump into some football stuff. So I've got a couple of good ones here, actually. I've been compiling them over the last week. Let's see here. I'm going to do who would be the best NFL team if the players were the mascot. So if
what?
So like the Giants, for example, were really Giants, or the Lions were truly the Lions, or the Texans were people from Texas. You know,
probably not the Texans.
Probably not the Texans.
Giants is a good.
Giants is a good start, I think.
I'm trying to think through. It's probably not going to be some bird.
No, the birds are screwed. So that can eliminate the Falcons, the Eagles,
Cardinals.
Definitely
not the Packers.
What are the
Bears?
Packers?
It's just like I feel like it's just people that Pack beat. I think that's what it is for, right?
Yeah, we can eliminate the 49ers because those are just humans.
Probably not the Browns.
No Browns because those are just people, I think, is also, or just the color brown, I guess. Rams probably.
What's more ferocious, a lion or a bear? Because you might have something.
That's a pretty good matchup. That's a good head-to-head, I think.
Rams could be good.
I feel like Giants might take the cake here.
Okay. How about this though? A jet? If it was like a living thing, just like running through people, running through animals, running through things.
Good point. And jets are pretty big too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So jet right now is my leader because what about a personified jet that just like had human feelings and instincts that could just like run over a giant, for example.
That's something, yeah. I mean, I feel like a giant might be able to manhandle a jet, though. Like, how big is a giant? Are we talking about like Paul Bunyan here?
We don't have any parameters for how big a giant is. We have an estimate for how big a jet is, but in theory, giant could be like, an infinite number for like the height and weight. So,
I guess as an aside to this, where do the Vikings fall in here? Also a human, but savages.
It's like inherently
they got to be in the top 15. I feel like because they knock out.
It's like you probably aren't going to put a Viking over the top of a bear or a lion.
But a Viking is going to win against pretty much every other human mascot, other than they beat the Chiefs. The Cowboys are going to have guns, so I feel like a Viking might lose to a cowboy. But they beat all the birds. And any small animal. I feel like a Viking would beat a jaguar.
That's a tough one too. Jaguar is a good one too.
Or a Bengal too. Is a Bengal bigger than a Bengal tiger? Bigger than a lion?
I do not know. This is biology that I'm not.
And on top, you got the dolphin. You got the dolphins too. They're very intelligent. They might be able to scheme up some crazy formations there. And on top of that, if you're playing them in the water, I don't think anyone beats them in the ocean. Dolphins are going to win 10 times out of 10. They got a home field advantage. We're probably screwed on land, but they definitely have home field advantage at home.
I don't know.
This is a tough one. I feel like ultimately it comes down to Giants.
The size of the Giant.
Giants, Jets is pretty hilarious. It's even honestly, Jets is even funnier if they're not like.
I feel like we're missing
if they don't have a brain.
Like very blatant too that we just haven't listed. Like
I don't think so. Chargers, Raiders, Broncos.
When I think of Chargers, I think of like a phone charger. It's funny. Like
Panthers, Saints. Saints might have some sort of like spiritual miracle. They could perform miracles.
Yeah, this is true.
Anyways, this
I think if the Giant can be like an infinite height and weight, then it's definitely a Giant.
Yep.
But like if there's a parameter on that, I'm gonna go with the Jet.
Yeah, I kind of when I think of a Giant, I'm thinking of like the Giant in the beanstalk.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So that's a big ass Giant.
Yeah.
I feel like that would win, especially if you got 53 of those guys.
It's like swat the Jet out of the air.
Yeah, imagine that thing coming off the edge. That would not be good.
Just not right on top of the quarterback.
All right, so that's the Thursday question for today. If you have an answer that you'd like to submit, feel free to do so via our Twitter account at unbelievable_MN. So let's get into some football stuff here. Like I said, the Vikings are up against the Broncos this week. They face a familiar foe in Vic Fangio, the head coach of the Broncos, former defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. He definitely had the Vikings' number when he was with Chicago. He brings in a team that is interesting. You know, you got some solid pieces, a couple of all-pros on this team, a couple of other solid Pro Bowl caliber players. But for the most part, this team is sort of in a rebuilding phase. If you want to call it that, they've kind of been in a rebuilding phase for the last couple of years because John Elway doesn't know how to find a quarterback. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in heading into this weekend. By all means, this is a game that the Vikings will and should be favored in, definitively. The Broncos are kind of trending more towards being a team that is out as opposed to a dark horse contender in the AFC. They started 0-4. They've won a couple games since then, so they have improved since kind of that rough start for Fangio. But ultimately, this team is basically they're very shorthanded. No Joe Flacco this week. And not a whole lot of playmakers here. So you start here with Brandon Allen, their quarterback. Like I said, he replaces Joe Flacco, who is out with criticism of the head coach and a back injury. And Allen, not a great history to work off of with this quarterback. I believe in my opinion, this is a guy who is going to be the quarterback for about 5 more weeks, and then it's going to be Drew Lock. And honestly, I don't know why they haven't gone to Drew Lock yet. Vic Fangio seems kind of stubborn in that regard. So Allen comes off of his first game as a quarterback. We got 1 game of film to work off of with him. He went 12 of 20, 60% completion, below average, couple touchdowns, under 200 yards. Big dude, so he fits the John Elway mold. But can he do anything against this Vikings defense that certainly did not look great against the pass last week?
Yeah, I mean, I know this seems like a quarterback that Mike Zimmer is going to attack and kind of ruin his day. He's not an established, efficient passer. We're not one of the. It seems like those premier quarterbacks get the best of Zimmer for the most part. Dak obviously did, but this Denver offense doesn't have a lot of playmakers. Philip Lindsay's okay. Their number 1 receiver right now is Cortland Sutton, I believe, after they traded away Emmanuel Sanders. Noah Fant at tight end did have the long touchdown against the Browns, which kind of, by the way, inflated Allen's numbers. I think it was like a 75-yard touchdown. So,
yeah,
Overall, I'm not super impressed. Obviously, it's one thing to at home play well enough to beat the Cleveland Browns. It's another thing to go into US Bank Stadium, where the Vikings, I believe, are one of the only, like, there's only one or two teams in the league undefeated at home, and the Vikings are one of them. And I mean, I really don't see Denver scoring much until garbage time in this game. They just don't have the talent especially on offense, to kind of compete with what the Vikings are going to present them. Again, I think the most talented defensive unit in the NFL. Despite what they displayed against Dallas, this is, I would say, almost a 180 from the passing offense that Dallas offered. When you have Brandon Allen, Cortland Sutton, and Noah Fant as kind of your leaders compared to Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Gallup, etc.
Yeah. So the one guy that sticks out to me on this Denver offense is Cortland Sutton, like you mentioned. He is their number one receiver now. Like you said, Sanders now playing for the San Francisco 49ers. He has some real talent. When he was coming out, was it last year or 2 years ago? I had him graded as one of the best receivers in the class. Granted, he did come out in a relatively down wide receiver class, but he has shown an ability. I mean, he's not a precise route runner, but he can get that job done. He tends to win with athleticism. Mm-hmm. For the most part. He's a go up and get it type of receiver. So I would expect to see Xavier Rhodes on him, given that Rhodes tends to have the most success throughout his career against bigger body receivers, which I would classify Sutton in that category of a receiver.
Yeah, he's 6'4", 220.
Yeah,
I mean, that's definitely big.
He's your standard flanker. He's going to be on the outside almost exclusively, and he really is the one threat to me on this Broncos offense. And the problem with that is that I don't trust his quarterback to even get him the ball. Brandon Allen won last week, but did he really win? Did he really like you said? What is it? What did it amount to? About 40% of his yards came on one play that Noah Fant actually caught the ball for the first time in his professional career. And broke loose. It's tough it's a tough situation to be in if you're the Broncos, because with Drew Lock apparently not being ready, you've got this bridge quarterback that lacks upside for sure. He is a glorified game manager at this point with kind of a weird hairstyle. That's kind of what I see from Brandon Allen, man. There are some things that he does well, but most of that is going to be underneath stuff and, relative to the NFL, what I would consider to be easy throws. And against a better defense, like I still consider the Vikings to be, I think that he's going to have some real problems. And I think that you brought up a good point, that this is the type of quarterback that Mike Zimmer is going to go after for sure. I expect that double A gap look to come out early and often. If I'm calling this game, I'm sending 6 on the first passing play of the first primary passing situation of the game, and I'm getting after this guy, because if he's uncomfortable in the pocket, this could be a game where the Vikings have multiple turnovers. They're simply not going to beat you over the top. I don't see that happening in any way, which leads you to the running game, which is really the only part of the Broncos roster that has been relatively consistent over the last couple of years. That's led by Phillip Lindsay, the undrafted guy out of Colorado State, right? And then you got Royce Freeman from Oregon, who also will get touches as well. That's a solid two-headed monster. A lot of talent within those two players, and they have a couple of solid blockers up front too. I'm not talking about Garrett Bowles when I say that, but Dalton Risner, the rookie, is a solid player, and so you have some nice pieces there. And Lindsey doesn't get the respect he deserves across the league. And he's certainly not going to get it this week, because if there is one staple to this Vikings defense, something that they do definitively well, even with Linval Joseph probably going to be out again on Sunday, it's stopping the run. So the the only game breaker that they really have on this team, I fully expect the Vikings to be able to shut down. This is a situation where I think that Zimmer will try to take Phillip Lindsay out of the game the same way he did with Ezekiel Elliott. And the running attack for the Broncos could get ugly, in a similar way to what happened with Dallas last week.
Yeah, and then you're forcing Brandon Allen to kind of make those 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 7.
Yeah, that's
plays,
not happening this week.
Which isn't going to happen because when you get, when Mike Zimmer can dial up those blitzes, and when you look at Zimmer's record, like blitz percentages, when you get him against a young quarterback, he seems more confident in kind of pulling the trigger on those. And a guy that's inexperienced, a guy that hasn't proven himself yet, he seems way more willing to bring the house or bring those exotic looks, and it generally works out for him. He is scared too against the likes of, Rodgers, Dak, all those names. He seems more scared too, which I think he shouldn't be. But
especially because you listed a couple mobile quarterbacks there too,
right?
Which
and maybe that's the difference. But
this guy is not mobile.
Right.
His statue out there,
and I think when he does dial up those blitzes against those young quarterbacks, it's lights out. I mean, again, I'm going to compare this to the Browns. Like, this defense is way more talented, way more cohesive in Minnesota compared to Cleveland. And then I also want to point out the pass rushers, because Dale Hunter and Everson Griffin are both having career seasons in terms of pressures. I think they're 1-2 right now in the NFL.
They are
in pressures.
With J.J. Watt out now. They are effectively 1-2.
I think they combined for like 18 last week against one of the best tackle duos in football.
And this is not one of the best tackle duos in football.
One of the best tackle duos in football. So it should be a big week for those guys, and I think Allen's going to have a really tough time with it.
Okay, so for Vikings fans, specifically keep an eye on Garrett Bowles. He's number 72. He's going to line up at left tackle. Watch this guy, because you're going to have a very enjoyable experience watching Everson Griffin.
If I remember correctly, the knock on him was that he had short arms, right?
There's a couple knocks on him. That was one of them. The other one was that he's like 42 years old when he came out. He is the subject of pretty much all the criticism in Denver. And don't get me wrong, a lot of players on this offense deserve criticism, but Garrett Bowles gets the brunt of it. And here's why. One, he holds literally like every single play. So just watch Everson Griffin go after this guy this weekend, because it's going to be comical.
The spin move is going to be hilarious to watch, because it's going to rip right through him.
There is no doubt in my mind that Everson Griffin is going to get after Garrett Bowles, and they're going to end up having to use their fullback, Andy Janovich, I think I'm pronouncing that last name right, to get an extra guy on Everson Griffin.
That could be Janovich looking at it. Could be. I don't know. I'm just looking at it.
Yeah.
I have no. I don't watch a lot of Broncos. So.
Yeah, I haven't heard it said audibly, because I don't watch film with the sound on, because I'm not insane. With the point that I was getting at there is that if they're going to have to add a guy to block Bowles, whether that's Lindsey, Freeman, the fullback, whoever it is, and add an extra guy to help Bowles on the left side, that's going to free up Danielle Hunter one-on-one against Juwan James, who great, an excellent prospect. By most accounts, I think when we were talking about him a couple of years ago as a draft guy, he was someone that came up for the Vikings. He ended up going to Miami. Didn't work out in Miami. It's working out a little bit better in Denver, but he's still not he's not a stud right tackle. This is not La'el Collins again. And based off of what Neil Hunter was able to accomplish last week, I think one-on-one against Juwan James could be a matchup to watch as well. But like I said, if you enjoy pass rushing and you enjoy the Vikings dominating defensively, enjoy that matchup between Garrett Bowles and Everson Griffin, because that one's going to be that matchup is going to be the personification of the meme with the guy sitting in the house and the house burning. That's going to be Garrett Bowles on Sunday, because he's a mess. He holds all the time. His technique is off. I don't think he's strong enough to out-muscle Everson Griffin, and I think that Everson Griffin has more finesse in him to his game. So that matchup could be dangerous. Brandon Allen might get killed this weekend. That's just that's kind of the way that I see it heading into this matchup. We didn't talk much about Noah Fant, and I think that's kind of rightfully so. The rookie coming out of Iowa, he hasn't done much professionally so far. part of that is because tight ends seem to have a tough transition to the NFL. I've never really understood why, but rookie tight ends just never seem to show out in their rookie year. It just, I don't know why that is, but he has all kinds of problems with his game right now. He's so many drops. Catching has been a problem for him, which if you're supposed to catch the ball, it
seems pretty important for tight ends nowadays.
It's kind of important. The one piece that I like on this offense moving forward, outside of Phillip Lindsay, is the rookie guard Dalton Risner. He came. I think most Vikings fans are familiar with who he is because he was connected to the Vikings heading into draft week. So keep an eye on him. He's number 66. He's a talented player, and I think he has a bright future in front of him. But outside of Lindsay, Cortland Sutton's really the only other guy that's going to beat you. So that's kind of what I'm seeing from this offense. I see matchup nightmares all around for the Broncos. I think the Vikings win handily on that side of the ball. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, granted, the Vikings offense has been playing great, and they're as balanced as we have seen them probably in the last decade. But this defense is filled with multiple talented players, and then you've got Vic Fangio calling the shots. And like I said earlier in the show, Fangio has the Vikings number. Granted, he does not have all the pieces that he did in Chicago to work with, but he's been highly successful scheming up the Vikings offense. So he knows what he's dealing with here. So that could be an interesting matchup to watch, kind of the battle between Stefanski and Fangio trying to out-scheme each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really think much about Fangio's history with Chicago, in that perspective. But I will say that this is really the first time, I believe, that he's faced. Well, I guess last year, week 17 might count here, but I think it's the first time that he's going to face the Kubiak Stefanski combo. He had Stefanski at primary offensive coordinator week 17 last year. But I think there is a big difference that Kubiak has implemented here with kind of the outside zone runs and whatnot that maybe weren't a staple for the Vikings last year. So that is a big change, I think. And from that perspective, I think the Vikings will be a little bit more, different for him. But you are right that the Vikings have not had a lot of success against Chicago, really in the Zimmer era. Well, last few years offensively. And that's a lot of that can be credited towards Vic Fangio.
Yeah. So starting on this defensive line, Fangio runs a 3-4 front, and that is special for him specifically because it allows him to use more movement, and he's got the pass rusher to move all around the defensive line. That's going to be linebacker Von Miller. You're familiar with him. You know who he is. He's an all-pro. He's an absolute stud. He's one of the best edge rushers in the game. He's going to line up on both sides of the formation. And that's kind of the benefit of running this 3-4, is that you get a pass rush with three guys. Derek Wolfe is really the only mainstay on this defense because Bradley Chubb is out with, I believe he tore his ACL earlier this year. So you're not going to see him. A couple replacement level players here with Mike Purcell and Shelby Harris. Neither of those guys are anything really to write home about. Wolfe has had a solid career. He's by no means a dangerous player, but he can open it up for Von Miller to get one-on-one off the edge. So I guess the one matchup nightmare here would be, in a situation where you get one-on-one against Von Miller. And I know Brian O'Neill has been outstanding throughout his career, but this will be probably the biggest test that he's had on the other side of Khalil Mack, I suppose. And Riley Reif, who has been playing, about as well as he has in a Vikings uniform over the last couple of weeks, he will definitely be tested as well because you will see Miller all over the place on this defense. He's kind of Fangio's toy, and it's funny because Fangio described him as an okay pass rusher once he became the head coach of Denver. I think it's fair to say that he was underestimating his talent with that remark, but. That's essentially what you're going to get from this front in terms of a pass rush. It's the Von Miller show,
right?
And if anyone else gets home, it's probably a product.
For what it's worth,
his
Miller. Sack numbers aren't very good this year. I mean, and we've said that a lot about Griffin and Hunter a little bit, where they're getting a lot of pressures, not necessarily the sack numbers, but right. Miller has kind of taken that step back in his age 30 season.
Yeah,
I think a little bit. So I wouldn't say he's maybe the top tier guy anymore that he used to be.
Right.
He's certainly one of the better pass rushers in the game, and it's going to be a large test for O'Neill or Rashad Hill or whoever is over there, because I know O'Neill might be a little bit banged up. But
Right, right. And then at the middle level of that defense, so Miller typically is going to be lining up on the line of scrimmage. So he is essentially a defensive end, but he's a linebacker. If you're talking about his official listing, the other three linebackers that they're going to trot out there, Malik Reed, who's a rookie. I don't know a whole lot about Malik Reed. I'll just be straightforward with you there. I don't remember him as a prospect. His numbers don't jump out. His film, he doesn't show up much on film. He's a player. That's what he is. He plays for the Broncos. The other two guys are Alexander Johnson and Todd Davis. And as far as I'm concerned, anyone named Todd probably shouldn't be playing professional football. That just seems strange. That's not a Todd thing to do.
What about Todd Gurley?
Yeah, he probably shouldn't be playing professional football right now either. Well, that's a good point. You kind of nullified my argument there. But the two inside linebackers are basically just tacklers. You also got Josie Jewell there, too. I like Josie Jewell. He doesn't play as much snaps as he probably should, in my opinion. But those are the three guys that you're going to see out there at linebacker. And kind of the way that this scheme works is those interior linebackers are basically there just to make tackles over the middle and also help in run defense. So that kind of opens up the lanes for guys like Von Miller. If Bradley Chubb were still there, him as well, to get one-on-one matchups with those two guys. Mm-hmm. But without Chubb, it's really the Von Miller show up front. The secondary still has a couple nice pieces, though. You've got Chris Harris, who is one of the best traveling corners in the league. He moves as well as anyone from the outside to the slot. And I would say that he is past his prime as well, but he's still, as good as you're going to find in terms of a guy that's going to give you, a full game and cover your best receiver. He's the guy that was on the trade market for a reason at the deadline. It's because he can still cover with the best of them. The one thing that I will say about Chris Harris is that he is small. He's a small guy relative to NFL players. Stands at 5'10". That doesn't really affect Stephon Diggs all that much, which I imagine will be the guy that he will primarily be covering. Mm-hmm. But if in the event that you're able to scheme this up correctly, it seems like Josh Doxson is going to be activated. That would be, in theory, would be a matchup nightmare based on the size of those two players. And then you've also got Laquan Treadwell, who seems to get one catch a week at this point. He's also got a physical advantage there as well. And I think you could say the same for B.C. Johnson, although he is a bit of a toothpick early in his career.
Yeah, and that's the thing we should just because they're bigger than Chris Harris doesn't mean that's a go-to matchup for those guys. But in terms of size, obviously. If you want to throw the ball up in a one-on-one situation, it's not the worst idea, given the size advantage. But I overall, I do like Diggs in that matchup. Overall, he's again one of the most precise route runners in the NFL, and he's very much due for kind of a big game and a slew of targets. I think it's been a couple of games where he has had 4 targets in each of the past couple of weeks. So he's very much due for a big game, and then. The Vikings haven't been targeting receivers at all very much past couple games. It's been a lot of running backs, a lot of tight ends, and BC's had 1 catch or 2 catches in the last couple games. Diggs obviously has had 4 total catches last couple weeks. So it'll be interesting to see if they maybe get back to targeting receivers. BC and Diggs getting more involved, just like that Detroit game where Diggs had 7 and BC had 4, and then. Really, Treadwell against the Chiefs has been the best receiver performance over the last few weeks, which is interesting.
It is worth noting, though, that you brought up the tight end position and how that kind of relates to this Broncos defense. I don't see an answer to Kyle Rudolph or Irv Smith in this linebacking group. So that to me means that they're going to probably have to move a safety on him. Maybe Kareem Jackson would make sense in theory. But realistically, I think that the Vikings match up very well at tight end. You could see more 2 tight end sets here just to try to get that that individual matchup. You've seen that what Kyle Rudolph is capable of doing still at this point in his career, and this might be the game for Irv Smith to get his first professional touchdown as well. I think that they do not have the personnel on this defense to match up well with Irv Smith's size and speed. Because Von Miller, for what it's worth, I mean, he's an outstanding edge rusher. He does not cover well if he's forced into coverage. That's not something that he does well. It's not really part of his game. So the last couple of guys on this defense that you're going to hear their names called out at some point, Justin Simmons, the free safety, and then Bryce Callahan will be back this week. He's back practicing. You probably remember him from his days with the Bears, and the Vikings have historically torched Bryce Callahan. He's a guy that I have been making fun of for multiple years now. So I'm happy to see him back. And overall, I mean, I like the matchups across the board on offense for the most part, based off of how the Vikings have played. They do seem to stop the run pretty well. I believe they're number 9 in the NFL right now in terms of total rushing yards per game. But Dalvin Cook seems to be kind of a mold breaker in that regard. It doesn't really seem to matter. Even if you stop him as a rusher, he's going to catch the ball out of the backfield and beat you as a receiver. So this is kind of a mismatch on paper. You've got a team that is got a couple of key players injured, and also in the middle of a rebuilding phase, and also having a first-year coach. That to me is a that's an inherent mismatch. And then you bring this to Minnesota. You're playing at US Bank Stadium, where, as we continue to harp on, the Vikings are as dominant as any team in the NFL, playing on their home field. So I don't really see a way for the Broncos to, have a definitive victory here. The Vikings would have to make a lot of mistakes, I think, turning the ball over at a ridiculous rate, which is something that Kirk Cousins quietly has not done over the last 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I suppose.
Also, the Broncos defense is 29th in the NFL in turnovers.
Yeah, so
they forced 7 all year.
I would say to keep an eye on Von Miller getting a forced fumble. I know that Cousins hasn't been fumbling recently, but he is as good as they come at getting that fumble sack. That's something that he does very well. So, overall, I just I don't see a matchup that I hate for the Vikings this week. There's no one on that defensive line that I think that can take advantage of Pat Elflein's let's call it deficiencies at this point. Really the one guy that's dangerous here is Von Miller. And like you said earlier, I mean, he's not the same guy that he was 2 or 3 years ago. So, I guess what do you see? What matchup here, or is there anything based off of what we see on paper that could give the Broncos an edge this week?
Their passing defense ranks pretty well. Now, that part of that could be the fact that they are losing in a lot of games, or that a lot of their games are just kind of, if you look at the game flow of a lot of their games, it's a lot of kind of churn the clock, run the ball. But overall, they are allowing they have allowed the 4th fewest passing yards. So in that perspective, this could be sort of a tougher test for Kirk and company, but and a lot of that I'm sure is credit to Vic Fangio as well.
Right.
But I don't see that being a huge problem. Again, the Vikings offense is flowing pretty well right now, and the last 2 weeks, really, the Chiefs game and the Cowboys game, the Vikings offense hasn't really, lit it up per se down the field, or Kirk hasn't had a fantastic performance, but they've been moving the ball efficiently enough to put up 23 points and nearly beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead, and then they went into Dallas and won with 28 points in that game. So I'm not too worried about it at home against Denver. I think if they continue to get Dalvin Cook involved, they maybe use receivers a little bit more. That this offense should continue to churn up the yards and the points as they have.
It's also worth noting, I suppose, that this is a Gary Kubiak revenge game. Keep in mind that Gary Kubiak won his only Super Bowl as head coach of Denver Broncos.
So he would have been the head coach the last time these two teams played, because it would have been 2015. Peyton Manning was playing quarterback for the Broncos then. It was Stephon Diggs' first career game.
I think he was. Yeah,
the one where he turned around to Aqib Talib.
Yeah,
on that out route.
That would make sense. I can't. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I believe that Kubiak probably was the head coach there the last time. This is definitely not the same team that when he was the head coach.
Von Miller might be one of the only players that's still on that roster.
Yeah. It seems like Jeff Hoyerman's been on this team for like 10 years too. But yeah. So I mean, that's kind of that's what I'm seeing here from this team. This is a situation that good teams take advantage of. You're playing at home. You've got everything rolling for you right now on offense. As from a fan perspective, I think that something to kind of keep an eye on here is just to see how Stefanski decides to attack this defense. Keeping in mind that this is probably a very similar scheme to what Chuck Pagano is running in Chicago. That's going to probably be an important game, Week 17. So maybe you'll get a bit of a preview in that regard to what the Vikings might try to do against a more talented Chicago unit down the road. But I'm expecting more screens, more kind of ways to bring the pass rush in order to open the ball up downfield. I can see some draws. I can see some screens. I can see some quick hitters. Ultimately, this is going to come down to how well can Stefanski scheme this one up, and it'll be fun to watch. So, give me one good reason. I think there's a lot of reasons why.
There's a lot of reasons why they would win this game.
Give me one good reason why they should win this game.
I'm just gonna go with the easy answer here, and talent. I think I don't agree with a lot of what Colin Cowherd says, but I think he made the point Sunday night that the Vikings-Cowboys game might be the game of the year in terms of talent, right? Like it was probably the football game throughout the 2019 season that included the most talent on the football field. And
I don't hate that.
And Denver does not have near the talent Minnesota does, and so even if Minnesota has a bad game plan or what have you, I think that they can win this game with talent alone, without the defensive scheming of Zimmer or Stefanski. They should be able to get away with their pure talent and athleticism that they have an advantage over Denver in.
Yeah, this is definitely the type of game that if you were not a Vikings fan, you'd probably just catch the highlights on Red Zone because this does not seem like a very quality matchup overall. All right, then. Well, we can use that to leverage into our picks for the week. I have an idea of where you're going with this one, but starting with the Vikings game. Are the Broncos going to get an upset after we just, kind of destroyed them?
No. Minnesota at home. They're not. I don't see them losing at US Bank Stadium this season.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you there. I'll take Minnesota too. I think it'll be a couple touchdowns. I don't expect Denver to score many points. So I can see the Vikings offense getting off to a hot start and then just burning the clock, kind of like they did a couple weeks ago against was it Detroit, when they got out to a hot start and just kind of slowly took the game over. That's kind of how I see this matchup playing out as well. So, all right, that takes us to the Thursday night game. Pittsburgh at Cleveland. You got an AFC North matchup here. Pittsburgh is playing a lot better than I think most people expected, despite kind of the issues that they're having there without the quarterback and whatnot. And Cleveland is coming off of a win over I guess I wouldn't call Buffalo a good team, but they have a good record. So does Cleveland keep this thing going?
They do. I still don't buy the Steelers, which not that I buy the Browns either, but I don't know. There's still way more talent on the Browns roster right now. Steelers roster is there's talent on defense, I think, but overall I'm going the Browns, and I still think they have a chance to make the playoffs, given that they're scheduled on the stretch here.
Yeah, I'm going to take Cleveland, too, against my better judgment. Pittsburgh's defense is playing out of their minds. Minka Fitzpatrick and T.J. Watt are a lot of fun to watch, but Mason Rudolph is awful, straight up. Like, he's not – he's a backup quarterback at best in the NFL. I don't see him beating the Browns, who, like you said, have plenty of talent on both sides of the ball. I expect them to win kind of on talent alone, playing on their home turf this week. Next one up here is Dallas against Detroit. Dallas coming off of their loss to the Vikings, obviously. They need a win here to keep pace with the Eagles in the NFC East, and they'll kind of have a good chance to do so going to Ford Field this week against Detroit. It seems unlikely that Matthew Stafford will play. He's still got a couple broken bones in his back. He's a warrior, but I think that Detroit would be wise to hold him out, given that he probably still has, a few pretty good years left in his career. It might not be the best idea to waste that away on a kind of a season that is, kind of fell down pretty quick here.
Yeah, I would pick the Lions if Stafford's playing, but I don't trust Jeff Driscoll to beat Dallas. Although I don't think Dallas is very good either. But I'll take the Cowboys for literally the only reason being the quarterback situation for Detroit.
Yeah, I'm taking Dallas too, basically for the same reason. Jeff Driscoll can run really fast. Unfortunately, he doesn't throw the ball that well.
Mitch Trubisky.
Kind of like Mitch Trubisky. That's a good point. All right, next one up here. AFC South, Jacksonville heads to Indianapolis. Indianapolis is coming off of one of the worst losses, period, of the year, dropping one to Miami. Jacksonville coming off of a bye. Nick Foles returns. They're both these teams are in the thick of it in the AFC South, obviously both behind Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. Chance to gain some ground this week if Lamar Jackson's able to beat Houston. So who is taking this AFC South matchup?
I got Jacksonville. I can't watch what Indy did last week and pick them to beat anybody this week. So I'm going Jacksonville. Brian Hoyer I've always liked Brian Hoyer as a backup. Like he's never been a turnover prone or turnover machine or anything like that, but he has not looked great so far.
Yeah. Hoyer is I think a lot of Vikings fans kind of have like Hoyer PTSD from that Browns game. When Josh Gordon kind of unleashed on the Vikings. What was that, like 2012? This is not the same Brian Hoyer. And Jacksonville's defense is very solid. Some great pass rushers there. Calais Campbell and Josh Allen will be getting after him. I expect Jacksonville to win this one as well. Next one here. I mean, on paper, Buffalo at Miami should be kind of a no contest game, but Miami is they're kind of hot. They got 2 wins in a row, and Buffalo is stumbling over themselves. That offense is not great.
Right. I'm going Miami because they're at home, and I've said all along that I don't think the Bills are that good, and I still don't think they're that good. And I think the Dolphins are going to take advantage of that and get another win against kind of a not great opponent.
Yeah, I'm going to take Buffalo. I don't hate taking Miami here, though. This is a Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game, I believe.
Doesn't it just seem like there's so many bad teams this year?
There's
like a lot of really good teams. Like it's like there's probably 6 to 8 like really good teams, and I'd put the Vikings in that category. But then I'd honestly put Buffalo in this really bad category of there's Buffalo, there's Miami, there's New York Jets, there's the Giants, obviously Cincinnati, Washington. There's so many teams that are just
and part of
terrible.
it is because there's so many backup quarterbacks out there right now, and
That's
Josh Allen kind of plays like a backup quarterback if we're being real here. He has not taken that step forward in his second year that I think a lot.
He's a good fantasy quarterback though. He got me 25 points last week. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns. So.
Yeah, he's a running back. So I'm taking Buffalo, though. Miami sucks. That's why. New Orleans at Tampa Bay, NFC South matchup. My God, Saints are coming off of another really, really bad loss.
That's a Vikings Bills from last year loss. Yeah. That's bad. That's bad. The Falcons are bad. This should have been the week that Dan Quinn got fired. And he goes into the Superdome and wins.
He's going to get a contract extension now.
He proves that Teddy Bridgewater is the better quarterback for the Saints than Drew Brees. Not really. I'm going with the Saints here because they will bounce back. Although I don't like road Drew Brees very much. So
yeah, I'm taking the Saints too. I mean, they are my Super Bowl pick, and that still stands. I still think this is one of the best rosters in the entire NFL. The defense is still outstanding. I expect that offense to rebound. Jameis Winston is still Jameis Winston, so he'll throw a couple interceptions, and the Saints should walk out of here with the victory.
Yeah.
So
he's had way too few he hasn't had enough turnovers the last couple weeks, so he's due for about 4 this week.
Sounds about right to me. All right, another absolute barn burner we got here. The New York Jets head to the Washington Football Team Stadium. That's one hell of a matchup, if you ask me. Ghosts versus, whatever Washington is doing. Dwayne Haskins is officially the starter. He has yet to throw a touchdown. Still 4 interceptions on his resume. He is not ready to play professional quarterback, especially on a bad team that can't block, that can't run the ball effectively, that really doesn't do anything well. Are the Jets going to get another victory and kind of head towards a hot streak here?
I think Washington wins this one, and I'm only picking them because they're at home. That's it.
I'm going to take the Jets because Washington has an awful team. Straight up. I mean, there's nothing that I like about Washington. I said this like a year and a half ago that there's like 3 or 4 redeemable pieces on that Washington roster right now, and that really hasn't changed. I feel bad for Haskins because I think they're ruining him. I don't think that he had a chance, and it's not looking good. I mean, there's obviously still plenty of time. He's a rookie quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but it's really not looking good there. I expect Sam Darnold to get the W. And he thinks they can still make the playoffs, so they'll at least be trying to do that. It's not going to happen for sure, but the delusion is real. So, all right, NFC South once again. Atlanta coming off that win over the Saints. They head to Carolina, who are coming off of that loss against Green Bay. Carolina looks to rebound with Kyle Allen once again. Christian McCaffrey looks to continue his MVP caliber season. Who you got in this one?
Carolina. Atlanta can't do that twice in a week. Yeah, I think so. Atlanta can't do that again. Carolina at home against one of the worst defenses. I'm sure McCaffrey will put up 200 combined yards and a couple touchdowns.
Yeah. I could see this one. I could see Atlanta scoring some points, though, here. I don't think...
Oh, yeah. The Panthers' defense is horrendous. So, I mean, it's one of those where... the run defense isn't either. Did you see Aaron Jones?
Yeah.
I mean, and Jamal Williams. They had all the running room in the world. So there'll be a lot of points scored in this game.
But ultimately, I'm with you. I think Carolina comes out ahead too. All right, this one, next one up here is probably game of the week. Houston, Deshaun Watson leads the Texans to Baltimore against Lamar Jackson, who is the hottest thing in the NFL right now. Literally everyone on the planet is talking about Lamar Jackson. He stated his MVP case the last couple of weeks here, and he did a spin move, so now everyone likes him. But Deshaun Watson isn't too bad himself. Hell of a quarterback they got down there in Houston. Can the Texans get out of there with the victory, or does this run continue for John Harbaugh and the Ravens?
I can't. I really want to pick Deshaun Watson and the Texans in this game, but the last 3 weeks for Baltimore, what has it been? They went to Seattle and beat the Seahawks. Then they went to Foxborough and beat the Patriots. And then they beat the Bengals by 40. I can't jump off that train now. So I'm going to stick with Baltimore just because of how great they look the last few games.
So the thing about Baltimore is it's not just Lamar Jackson. Like, that scheme that Mark Roman is running right now is straight up one of a kind. Like, no one else can replicate that. I've been hearing it all week that like teams are going to be looking for the next Lamar Jackson. There isn't one. First of all, you're not going to find another Lamar Jackson anywhere. And second of all, even if you do, good luck finding a scheme that works, because this is like that scheme that Mark Roman is. Yeah. He's the only guy in the NFL who has been successful running this type of offense. With all that being said, I'm still taking Houston because I love Deshaun Watson. I think that he is the guy. He is the next face of the NFL, not named Patrick Mahomes. So I think that Houston can get this done. I think that this is going to be a hell of a matchup, one that I'll definitely be watching. But ultimately, I've got the Texans getting out of there with the victory. I might be the only one that thinks that, though. So next one. San Francisco looks to rebound, and they got an opportunity to do so here. They will face Arizona back at home at Levi Stadium. Kyler Murray looks to continue kind of I feel like Kyler Murray is heading towards Offensive Rookie of the Year just because he's a quarterback, where Josh Jacobs is going to end up kind of falling to that narrative, I suppose. San Francisco is as good of a team in the NFL still. They barely lost to a very good Seattle team.
They look bad, though. I think both Seattle and San Francisco look pretty bad Monday
Garoppolo
night,
is not.
Garoppolo looked really bad. I think I saw the number on throws 10 or more yards downfield. He was 3 for 18, I want to say, or something like that. 3 for 18 for like 59 yards. So that's bad. That's really bad. But I'm taking the 49ers just because of their defense and the fact that they're home.
Yep, I'm taking San Francisco for the same reason. Cincinnati at Oakland. On paper, a couple of weeks ago, this did not look like a good one, but Oakland is shaping up to make a playoff run, shockingly. And Cincinnati is awful, so I don't think we need to talk much about this one. Oakland it is for both of us. Another good matchup here. Patriots travel to Philadelphia. Eagles are tied up top the NFC East with the Vikings beating Dallas last week. Tom Brady coming off of a bye. It seems kind of inevitable to me that the Patriots win this one. What are your thoughts?
I'm going Philly. I don't really know why. I'm going Philly just because I don't think New England's played a lot of competition this year. They did against Baltimore. They didn't seem like they were ready for it. And now they got to go on the road to a tough environment. I think that'll be enough to make this a close game. And I think I'm going to go against the grain here, I guess, and pick Philly.
Yeah, I'm gonna take New England. Belichick after a bye, that just doesn't sound good.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but I'm not going back. Give me Philly.
All right, sounds good. We'll split on that one. Chicago against the Los Angeles Rams. Two just disgusting offenses going head to head.
How about that? How about that narrative for the Rams now? Last year, this is the offense that ripped up the Vikings for like 600 something yards or whatever it was on Thursday Night Football, and now Jared Goff looks like the worst quarterback contract in maybe the history of the sport.
It's not looking good.
It looks terrible. I'm picking the Rams just because he's not Mitch Trubisky.
That's kind of where I'm at too. The Rams have looked really bad the last couple of weeks. Chicago still looked worse.
And Goff is considerably better at home so that's another reason to pick the Rams here, because on the road he's been extremely bad, or at least at home he's at least put up decent performances.
Yeah. All right, so Rams for both of us, leading us to the last game of the week. Monday Night Football. Kansas City travels to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. AFC West matchup. This could be a defining moment for the Chargers. They have an opportunity to get back into it here and also help out the Raiders potentially as well. Who you got in this one?
I have the Chiefs. That they have to stop losing, right? With Mahomes at quarterback. Like, I think they've lost the last 3 games where he's played the whole time.
Yeah.
Which that's going to stop eventually. So, give me the Chiefs. Mexico City game, by the way.
Yeah.
But I'll take the Chiefs. But again, I really could see the Chargers come away with a win here.
Yeah, Chargers seem like they're kind of figuring it out here. Melvin Gordon looks like himself once again. But the thing is, the problem right now in Los Angeles is Phillip Rivers. He's kind of showing his age a little bit the last few weeks. I'll take the young MVP quarterback any day here. You're right. They're actually not. This is not a home game for Los Angeles. They're playing in Mexico City. So on a neutral field, I'll take Kansas City all day on that one. So that rounds out the picks for the week here, and we'll finish up here with our gambling locks. I should say, by the way, that we both went 5-8 predicting matchups last week. I stand at 84-63-1. Drew is 93-54-1. So he's still got a sizable lead over me there. And our gambling picks really did not go too much better last week. I missed at Kansas City -6, and Drew's pick, which sounded really good on paper, of New Orleans, Atlanta over 50.5. That did not work out either. So we'll try to get back on a. We have the potential to go on a true losing streak here if we don't get them here. Who is your lock of the week?
So I'm 0-2 on my lock of the week, I believe, betting on overs. You might want to double check that, but I believe I have bet 2 overs.
That's correct.
And they've both missed.
Oh no, you did get 1 over correct. You're 1-2.
Okay. But I'm gonna try. I don't think I've bet an under yet, and I think I'm gonna try that this week. I got the Niners and the Cardinals under. It's at 46 right now. And the reason for that is I think so the Niners Seattle game ended at 27-24. That was aided by a couple of defensive touchdowns, one on both sides. Niners at home, that defense is as good as it gets in the NFL. I think the Seahawks did have a lot of trouble with them. And then based on what Jimmy G did, I don't think he's going to replicate that performance at Arizona a couple weeks ago because he looks bad. And so I don't see the Niners putting up more than like 30 points in this game, and I think the Cardinals will be in the low teens. So I think an under 46 seems like a pretty good bet to me.
Yeah, I'm going to go with an over. I haven't done this since my Week 4 pick that I got right. I'm taking Houston-Baltimore over 49.5. Dueling quarterbacks. Baltimore also has the potential to score on defense as well. I mean, Baltimore scored 49 points on their own yesterday. On Sunday. So I see 50. I see at least 50 points. I mean, ultimately, I think this game is going to be like a 28-24 score, and that'll get it done for the over. So that is my lock of the week. Hopefully, we'll both get on track in that regard. And I believe that wraps up the show. Any final thoughts before we close this thing out?
Shout out to Rocco Baldelli, AL Manager of the Year.
Hey, how about that,
for
huh?
the Minnesota Twins. Yep.
Love to see that. He definitely deserved it. I had a bunch of Yankees fans that tried to tell me that Jesus, why can't I think of the name of their head coach? Aaron Boone. That Aaron Boone should be Manager of the Year. But Rocco's resume, I mean, I looked at this. Vegas had the Twins winning 78 games this year.
And they won 101.
Yeah. So that's 23 above Vegas. Not even Vegas could have seen that coming. They also broke the home run record, and Baldelli clearly managed his personnel well, got the absolute most out of this Twins lineup, and they're set up for sustainable success moving forward. I certainly agree. That's awesome that he won that in his first year too. It seems like the Twins have found their manager for, based on Twins history, probably for the next decade, and hopefully that's the case. So, I think that's all. That's all I got for this week. Thanks as always for listening to the show. For you newcomers, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and hopefully you'll be back later this week. Make sure to check out the rest of the podcasts available to you on the Climb the Pocket Network, available on Daily Norseman, iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere else where you find your podcasts. Feel free to like and subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher, I guess, any of the other places that you find your podcasts. We're also available on YouTube. If you like watching podcasts more than listening to them, you can watch Drew and I talk. I don't know why you would do that, but if you like doing it, it is available to you on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to that channel, like the videos as well, because that helps us. So thank you, and hopefully we will catch you next week following a Vikings victory.